Ladies, gentlemen, and genetic anomalies, what is happening? I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and if not, I hope that today's stream makes your day at least a little bit better. I am your host, Not a Newbie, coming to you live from the East Coast of the United States of America, and today we have a lot of topics to get to, and also some fun in games, because we're not just going to be going over politics. I'm also going to be playing X-Defiant later tonight, as well as Halo Infinite with the guys from Card 3. And I think during X-Defiant, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let people in my Discord server just hop on to the VC with me, and they can ask me whatever question they want. They can talk about whatever they want. So if you want to participate in that conversation, all you have to do is click on the link right here. Actually, no, you can't do that because it's just an overlay text. But if you enter it, you will be able to join the Discord server. And then from there, you'll be able to, hop on when I have collaborative streams where I let people chime in with their thoughts. You can send stuff into the React request channel. That's where I will pull from like some of the topic ideas and stuff. I pulled those from that in part. So if you want to influence the things that I talk about, then check out the Discord server as well. Also, we've got a community of folks who just like chilling and talking about politics or whatever. We've got a TV channel. We've got like VCs and video channels where people could do watch parties, all types of things. So chances are, if there's something you're interested in, you'll be able to discuss it there in the Discord server. But of course, we do have news stories to discuss as well. Got stuff about the economy, some videos I plan on reacting to. A whole bunch of stuff. But actually, hold on. I am going to get myself some water because I realized I did not prep myself a drink before I went live. So the TTS is on. You guys can just run the stream for like 2 minutes while I go down, get a little glass of something or a little can of something, and I will be right back. All right, I am back. I have returned. No, I did not forget about you guys. Okay. All right, so we've got a whole bunch of topics to discuss. I don't think I listed all the things I wanted to talk about. Of course, there was the economy, right? There was stuff about the economy that I wanted to talk about. Oh, hey, David Studios Animation just joined the Discord server. Hold on, let me give him the flair that he'll need. Let me see. Lanyard holders. There we go. Nice. You have, if you're in my Discord server, basically I have to give you a little role so that you can interact, because at one point my Discord server was getting brigaded by someone who was like spamming like gore or something into the server. So that's why I locked it down. But now David Studio Animations, you can now send messages and stuff into the server. So yeah, we've got all these topics here, and you know what, I'm actually going to cut the music because I do want to go ahead and get to all these topics, because I do want to make sure that I have enough time for the fun and games, and also, you know, especially XDefiant, so that you guys can hop on and talk with me during the stream, which I have not had the opportunity to have you guys do for quite a while now. So hold on, let me just move this over here. All right, I think we have everything in place. All right, hold on, here we go. Now, if I'm being honest, yes, I am gloating a little bit because everyone in my Discord server has been going crazy over the whole eggs thing. They've sort of been on the Democratic bandwagon of caring about egg prices now that Trump is president. Now, I mean, to give them credit, right? Decreasing egg prices is something that Donald Trump has promised. So it does make sense to be like, hey, you promised this thing, go ahead and give us this thing. Now, Donald Trump certainly didn't help things by saying that he would decrease egg prices in a single day. But at the end of the day, the job is getting done. We've got this headline here from CNBC, which says wholesale egg prices have plunged. Analyst says shoppers may soon see some relief. Now, I will say that I don't know that Trump necessarily deserves the credit for this, because these things are just natural. And, you know, there was the bird flu that went and had a very negative effect on the hen population, the hens that were laying the eggs. And then Joe Biden had a bunch of hens culled. Now, a lot of folks on the right are going to say, oh, it's Joe Biden's fault that we're having an egg shortage because he had a bunch of chickens killed. Well, I think it's pretty normal, right? You don't want the bird flu just spreading across, you know, all these birds. And if there's no other way to treat or contain the sickness, then yeah, you know, you can kill a bunch of the birds and then the bird flu doesn't spread as prolifically. So I don't really fault the Biden administration for doing what he did in the way that he did, just because it has been demonstrated to me that that's sort of outside of the realm of what you're supposed to do in these sorts of scenarios. But either way, right, it looks like things are getting back into balance, right? I mean, this headline here says that the prices have plunged. We could even read deeper into the article here. Wholesale egg prices have fallen significantly in recent weeks, a dynamic that may soon offer relief for consumers shell-shocked, by record high prices at the grocery store this year. Experts quickly how quickly and how much egg retail prices will fall is unclear, however, experts said. Wholesale prices dropped to $4.83 per dozen on Friday, a 44% decline from their peak of $8.58 per dozen on February 28th, according to Expana, which tracks agricultural commodity prices. The pullback comes amid a reprieve from major bird flu outbreaks so far in March and weaker consumer demand, which have helped the nation's egg supply to start recovering, according to a U.S. Department of Agriculture market analysis published on Friday. Prices have plunged, says Karen Rispoli, an egg market analyst and managing editor at Expana. Market dynamics are also putting extreme pressure on wholesale prices to fall further, Rizzoli wrote an email. Yeah, so there's one thing that I've been hearing across the internet, even in real life as well. Some people have been saying, well, you know, if eggs are too expensive, I'm going to go buy something else. Now, I will say that this is the most heartening thing to hear as someone who's not a globalist, right? As someone who doesn't want to, you know, eat the bugs, right? I'm not like, oh, let's just find alternate sources of protein. But this is a fact, right? And, you know, for people who have families and whatnot, they can't necessarily afford to sort of like hold the line and just buy eggs at all of these higher prices. They might go to something else for their sources of protein, or unfortunately, they just might decide to just get fewer eggs and have less protein, or forego eggs altogether and not replace it with anything else. But you know, such is the case, right? When prices get too high, that's just gonna price people out of that market, and they're just not gonna buy eggs anymore. But thankfully, it is good to see some pressures decreasing the price of eggs, and also, of course, the hen population recuperating, which is, of course, going to help the supply of eggs long term. So retail egg prices hit record high. Consumers paid $5.90 for a dozen large grade A eggs on average in February, a record high according to U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data. Retail prices have blown past their prior record, $4.82 per dozen in January of 2023, and have nearly doubled from a year ago. That is pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Prices have surged amid a deadly outbreak of bird flu in the U.S., which has killed millions of egg-laying chickens and crimped, that's an interesting word. I don't think I've heard that word in quite a while. Crimped egg supply, according to agricultural economists and market experts. The U.S. Department of Justice also opened an antitrust investigation to the pricing and supply practices of major producers. That's news to me, actually. I did not know that bit there. However, bird flu outbreaks seem to have tapered off in March, at least for now. Slowing bird flu outbreaks are leading to improved supply availability, and wholesale market prices have responded with sharp declines over the past week. Now, this is interesting because I actually very recently reacted to an article from CNET that had some quotes from some experts who were saying, these prices are going to be going down soon. Actually, hold on. Let me see if I can pull this up. The specific timing that they had, I'm not 100% aware of, but I think that it was somewhat similar to what we ended up seeing. So hold on, here it is. Yeah, my egg prices. These people in my Discord in the end of January. I think it's also fair to point out that Donald Trump, let me see. It was Biden for on that. Were they saying like the end of March or end of April? I want to say I can't remember for the life of me. Transcript. Let me see. March, April. Okay, here it is. Oh yeah. So here's the interesting part right here. Will usher the prices lower. I generally agree with that as well. The USDA has projected egg prices will start to return to normal by April, according to its monthly World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates report in the form of PDF. The price will drop back down to $2.50 per dozen in the second quarter of 2025 and down to $2.10 in the third quarter. So that is interesting because we're nearing April, and it seems like we're actually recovering ahead of schedule. I was sort of like hedging my bets because like last week I was looking at the prices. I noticed that the prices seem to be going down, at least for me just eyeballing it, and I was like, oh, interesting. It looks like we're actually ahead of schedule because it's mid-March and prices are already starting to go down. But yeah, here now we're seeing experts kind of acknowledge, yes, egg prices are going down ahead of schedule. It says here, consumers dissuaded by high prices and purchase restrictions imposed. But yeah, that basically is rephrasing stuff that was said earlier. Yeah, many of these things have actually been said in the first half of this article. It basically seems like it repeated itself using AI. I'm not accusing Greg Iacurki, I don't know how you say that, of using AI, but it seems like this article basically repeats itself halfway through. It's an interesting article, though, and it's nice to see that financial experts, the people who are actually watching the markets and professionals in that arena, are starting to acknowledge that, yes, egg prices are starting to go down. Now, of course, I think like I said earlier, we probably can just attribute this more to the natural progression of things, right? You cull the diseased chickens, and then the existing hens lay more eggs, right? Or and then the population starts growing, and then of course with the greater supply, the price goes down. It's just natural and normal. I think that Donald Trump really should not have gone and talked about decreasing the price of eggs, because that's not the type of thing that's under his purview. Now, when it comes to gas prices, right? Donald Trump's efforts and where he decides to lean and use his influences there, that has more control over the price of gas. We saw Joe Biden's decisions have massive effects on the gas prices for good and for ill. So I think that Donald Trump just made the wrong decision there by giving a promise on egg prices when he didn't need to, right? And there are other things that Donald Trump can do and is going to do that will help the economy in general. I know that he's got the whole tariffs thing going on, but beyond that, there are policies that Donald Trump is doing or is going to do that are going to help the economy in general. So he shouldn't have said what he said about the egg prices, because that's not under his purview. He should be focusing on the economy, at a broader level when he's talking about what he's going to do and stuff. So I think it's kind of unfortunate, right? Like, presidents should be making promises like that if they can't keep them. That was a big mistake on his part. Let's see here. I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with this dude. This is Michael Burns. He's the guy who runs the Wisecrack YouTube channel. I think he's the main presenter of it. And I used to kind of like that channel because it sort of would dive into the philosophy that was behind, certain shows, certain movies, or certain works of literature or fiction. But now it's a heavily ideological YouTube channel that goes beyond just breaking down the philosophies that you see in shows and movies, but has now sort of transformed into sort of like a soapbox for him to talk about politics, Michael Burns, which is interesting because he has his own channel here where you would think that'd be more appropriate for him to do the same thing. But no, if you go to Wisecrack, he's got these streams that he does now where he literally, hold on, let me see. He's got these streams now where he literally just talks about politics. So this is not new, by the way. This is like something that's been going on for I think at least a year. Like, sometimes, yes, he goes and talks about like the philosophy that's in a movie, such as like how Christians took over politics, God's Not Dead 5. That's fair. But like things like what happens if the economy grows forever and things like that, or the left abandoned DEI, what comes next is dangerous. Like, these types of things are not under what at least I had come to know Wisecrack for. I thought it was like a primarily, Wisecrack is a collective of academics, filmmakers, artists, and pop culture junkies who are curious and contemplative about the world around us. Our channel explores big ideas like philosophy and critical thinking through the lens of movies, TV shows, video games, and current events, and more. This must not have been updated in years, because that's not what they do anymore. The Wisecrack channel, as most people I think used to know it in the olden days, has died, and now it's become something very different. Lots of people seem to like the very different thing that it has become. I'm not the biggest fan, because I'm not the biggest fan of Michael Burns's ideology, but at least people kind of are still down with it. But anyways, I wanted to react to this video. This video, the main reason I wanted to react to it was because initially this video was called Elon Musk and Evangelicals Hate Empathy. That's what it used to be called. And so I'm like, okay, well, I am an evangelical, one would say. I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. So interesting to see why he thinks that Christians hate empathy, but it seems he has changed his mind, because the title now says the real reason conservatives hate empathy, which is true, by the way. And I have an explanation for that as well. I'm wondering actually if he has come to the same conclusion that I have on this, but I'll just let his video play out here.
Empathy is bad. Hell, it might even be...
Wait, hold on. What did he use there?
Empathy is bad.
Empathy is bad? This is using a title from Secular Talk, which is a left-wing content creator, but, Kyle Kalinske. But actually, he's kind of accurate there. So I do want to mention that here. Kind of interesting to see where he goes with this.
Empathy is bad. Hell, it might even be a sin. At least according to Elon Musk, who in a recent interview with muscular intellectual Joseph Rogan said that we are experiencing civilizational suicidal empathy. And for Musk, this is largely because...
Now, the interesting thing is, he is accurate, but leftists are also accurate when they said that conservatives hate empathy. And I'll explain why later on, but they're both kind of right. You know, you have to strike a balance.
Empathy at the individual level is costly to the collective, or put differently, empathy for people is costly for corporations. You know, an example that Elon Musk gives is empathy for
where do you get that from?
empathy at the individual level is costly to the collective, or put differently, empathy for people is costly for corporations.
Put differently, that's for sure. That's for sure. I want to say this guy is like, he's one of those like more radical anti-capitalists, right? I think that's one of the things that sort of like irked me. You know, whenever people start saying like, oh, you know, what was it called? Late stage capitalism, whatever, it's a big red flag. They're going to get a low IQ political take. That's generally... and that's generally one of the trademark signs that, oh, you are in left-wing extremist territory when you're listening to political commentary.
Costly to the collective, or put differently, empathy for people is costly for corporations. You know, an example that Elon Musk gives is California providing medical insurance to undocumented folks. I mean, listen to this shit. He says, the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy, the empathy exploit. He goes on to say that they're exploiting a bug in Western civilization, which is the empathy response.
Western civilization, that's not true. It's not Western civilization. It's humanity. And that's why that's why it's been exploited so constantly and consistently throughout history across governments of all different types of leanings and styles. Like, you know, you have to appeal to emotions if you want to win. And this is why Democrats, for quite a while until Trump burst on the scene, were sort of viewed as the dominant force in American politics, is because the primary drive of the left wing, for the most part, seems to be, at least in as far as what they argue, emotion. They lead with appeals to emotion when you listen to their argumentation. And sort of that's like sort of how they're led. Now that's what Donald Trump did in 2016, where it's like, America should be great, right? Rah, 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 patriotism. And so then with that, you know, appeal to emotion as well, he sort of swept up the nation into the whole MAGA frenzy. So, you know, it's not a bug in Western civilization. This is just how God built humans to be empathetic to each other. And if you say, hey, it's empathetic, if you support this political policy, and you will automatically become a good person, or at least better than the people who don't support the political policy. Buy into that narrative, and then like that's a golden ticket to like 10, 15 years of political power.
They're exploiting a bug in Western civilization, which is the empathy response, and that empathy has been weaponized. And don't worry, because the right-wing evangelicals are talking about this one too. And there are some right-wing theologians who are legit arguing that empathy...
The sin of empathy? I thought that was a parody, because I've been hearing left-wingers online talk about the sin of empathy. I thought that was a parody. Is that real? Hold on, wait a second. The sin of empathy. The sin, hold on, wait a second. Let me look this up here. The sin of empathy. If this is a real book, then it's probably on Wikipedia, right? Oh, this is real. This is from Canon Press. I think, aren't they like conservative or something? Me empathy, the greatest rhetorical tool of manipulation in the 21st century. I mean, true. Because love is a real virtue, empathy's power is in posing as selfless care for victims. A sad polar bear paces as David Attenborough informs you that the family suburban is melting the ice caps. Jesus was an asylum seeker, the sign reads at an open borders rally. Yes! This is all true! This is, yes! This guy is nailing it, whoever it is. A forlorn Bruno wishes he too could change in the women's locker room, a place where he's always known he belongs. Yo, this is great. Wait. Wait, my mom said if we don't go, she'll just be devastated. When you reject the sin of empathy, you reject the manipulation of the media, the manipulation of family and friends, and most importantly, the manipulation of your own heart. This looks like an amazing book, actually. This looks like the type, like as a kid, I was homeschooled. One of the books I had to read was like some book of like logical fallacies, and I found it extremely educational. This seems like sort of like a version of that. Like there is a section in that book that talked about the appeal to emotion or the appeal to empathy. This seems like a really good like crash course in how that's manipulated in American politics. Hold on, let me see. The appeal to emotions. Because this is a formal fallacy. Appeal to emotion, or argumentum ad passionis, I'm definitely saying that correctly, is an informal fallacy characterized by the manipulation of the recipient's emotions in order to win an argument, especially in the absence of factual evidence. This kind of appeal to emotion is irrelevant to or distracting from the facts of the argument, a so-called red herring, and encompasses several logical fallacies, including appeal to consequences, appeal to fear, appeal to flattery, appeal to pity, appeal to ridicule, appeal to spite, and wishful thinking. I also see this paired a lot with the appeal to authority, right? Like a lot of people on the left, if they can't use this, they'll use appeal to authority. It's like, oh, just trust the experts, right? Or trust the scientists, or whatever. I literally was watching a segment, an old segment of Joy Reid debating the Moms for Liberty leader about banning inappropriate books from school curriculums. And Joy Reid's position at the very end was literally saying only sociologists and library scientists are qualified to say what books are appropriate and inappropriate to be included in school curriculums. I'm not joking. That's literally what she actually, hold on. I'm not just going to say that. I'm going to play the clip where she does that. So it's Joy, if you look up Joy Reid, Moms for Liberty. Now, I don't know if they cut this out of the MSNBC version, because I watched the Moms for Liberty version, because I noticed that it had the whole thing. It was 16 minutes long, and this is only 12 minutes long. Is the end on here? Hold on, let me see. I think she literally says like only like sociologists and library scientists should be allowed to say what's included in school curriculums, or what is inappropriate to include in school curriculums.
We believe that that children should be able to read.
Then how can Moms for Liberty insist that the school board take that book away and then say that a parent who wants the child to be able to read it must purchase it? That's essentially putting a tax on parents who want their children to read the book. Your kids get to have books for free that you agree with, but children who want to read, or parents who want their children to read books you don't like, have to purchase it. That doesn't sound fair.
Did you know that in the city that we're sitting in, only a quarter of children are reading on grade level?
That's a great point. That's a great point.
And so while we're having this conversation about books in libraries, two things should be happening.
That's a great point.
We should be talking about literacy rates and the fact that America's kids are not learning how to read, and we should be having vibrant conversations about what books should be in libraries.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, they cut that off. They cut off the end, too. Hold on. If you go to this has the actual full segment.
At the heart of America's culture war
did
lies
not
education.
upload.
And it's a fight that has intensified in recent years, alongside Florida's Don't Say Gay bill.
So if you look up, oh yeah, hold on, here it is. It's right here.
What a school board would do, you were on a school board, you would hire experts and have expert voices come in,
Parents
and people who are sociologists, people who are library science.
Parents.
Wait, so only sociologists and library scientists should be the ones saying this is inappropriate and this is appropriate for schools. That is the appeal to authority fallacy. So between that and that's basically a nutshell of every single left-wing argument you'll hear, or at least like the most like pervasive and popular ones. So sin of empathy is real. It's just the appeal to emotion fallacy. But it's interesting because this is actually, I'm guessing that the rhetoric that he's going to say here is actually going to be an appeal to emotion fallacy, because everyone thinks that empathy is good, right? We all understand that empathy is a good thing. Right? It's good to have empathy for people who are different than us, especially. right? Because we can't just only be able to have empathy for people who are similar to us, because then we'd just be cruel and heartless to those who disagree with us or are different than us. And so if you put it like that, it sounds really bad. But if you acknowledge, oh, this is actually the appeal to emotion fallacy, where people are making emotional arguments without factual backing or without using kind of like more logical ways of coming to a particular conclusion, then you have an actual problem. But I think that maybe the title's a little bit unfortunate, and that's going to end up having some very emotional reactions, which perhaps this is going to be one of those.
And there are some right-wing theologians who are legit arguing that empathy is actually tricking poor little Christians into like doing woke stuff. I don't know, this shit's crazy. I mean, seriously, can you imagine being like, oh, it's unchristian to have empathy? That's what they're saying. They're saying that it's unchristian to have
Wait, did he read the book? Because what he's saying here is not true. And I don't know if he's lying on purpose or by accident, but it's just not true. We literally read the description of the book from the publicist's website. The book isn't saying that empathy is bad. See, lies like this are very frustrating. It's very hard for me to watch this person because many times a lot of the things that he says, they come off as very dishonest, they come off as very disingenuous, and on top of that, I think he's slightly pompous in how he presents himself. So I'm not a big fan. This is why I unsubscribed from Wisecrack. But this is just a blatant lie that we debunked like 5 minutes ago. What in the world?
Empathy. To be empathetic. They're saying that to be empathetic is unchristian. And there's another
Now, it's interesting though, is that I wonder, while he's lying, yes, I wonder how many people on the left have bought into this lie, right? I think it's not entirely wrong to observe media like this or preserve political coverage or analysis like this that is false, that is deceitful, that does not accurately portray the positions of others, because they oftentimes do represent a sizable portion of a certain part of the political aisle. And so if you listen to people who say things like this, even if they're not true, it allows you to have a good handle on what the other side of the political aisle is thinking. And then if you're confronted with some sort of question or whatever, then you have a response rather than being like, oh no, wait, what? My side thinks empathy is bad? Oh no, that's horrible, because empathy is actually good, right? So, the types of things to be aware of. And see, this is how empathy gets weaponized. Well, no, that's not the right way to put it. This is how people use the appeal to emotions to manipulate folks into supporting their own political ideologies. It's weird to me that the right isn't that good at doing this, but there's something that the right does instead, which I'll get to later.
Book written by another right-wing Christian that's called Toxic Empathy.
Well, I must say I don't like Ali Beth Stuckey as well, and that's we'll get into that later. I think I did a stream like 3 years ago talking about how I didn't like her.
It's written by conservative podcaster Ali Beth Stuckey, more like Ali B. Sucky. And it's another book about how leftists
left-wing humor. Haha, this is so funny. The left can meme.
Progressives supposedly exploit Christian empathy. It argues cool things like that empathy for migrants is actually unchristian. And the reviews for this one, well, I'm going to let some of these speak for themselves. One reviewer says, a hateful book that doesn't even attempt to disguise its hate for people different from the author. If Jesus...
Okay, to be fair, that I would believe about Ali Beth Stuckey. I would believe that that book might be hateful, or at least lack empathy. I've heard some of the things that Ali Beth Stuckey says that it actually does track.
was alive today, people like her would persecute him based on their twisted view of Christianity. Another review says, as a Christian and someone with an IQ higher than I can count on my fingers, this book is objectively horrible. And this one from Jude Yeager says, a pathetic attempt to claim progressives use empathy to bully them while using the modern, hateful nature of Christianity to bully trans women, women who get abortion, and the gay community. I mean, I'm sure that...
Now, the one thing I will say, and hold on, I'm going to look this up. Hold on, let me see here. Because one thing I noticed that he did was that he did not include the popularity of the reviews. Hold on, let me look this up. Okay, so toxic empathy. Oh, here we go. View book details. Okay. So if we look at the reviews, the average review is 4. I'm sorry. I almost feel like this entire video is going to be a lie, because in the beginning he says that this in the beginning he says that this book is saying that empathy is bad. The first book, The Sin of Empathy, is saying that empathy is bad, which is not what it's saying. It's not its thesis. If you would just read the description of the book, you would find that out. And then here he is cherry picking reviews of the Allie Beth Stuckey book, which, by the way, I don't like Allie Beth Stuckey, but he's cherry picking reviews to make it seem like a bunch of people read it, and then the people who read the book just didn't like it, thought it was hateful, and thought it was horrible. Only showing 1-star reviews. The average review is 4.7 out of 5. How many people gave 1-star reviews? 5%. 5% of the people who left reviews gave a 1-star review. If we go to the the top reviews, 5 stars. Little book, big challenge, huge encouragement. The second top review, excellent book and demonstrates change in American thinking in America. Customers say, this is from AI, which basically takes a conglomeration of all of the reviews of the book and then basically tries to summarize them. It says here, customers find the book helpful and relevant with biblical references. And they describe it as a wonderful, succinct read that makes a compelling case for how empathy pushed too far can be harmful. Right. It doesn't even say that empathy is bad. It just says how empathy pushed too far can be harmful. The writing quality is praised as thoughtful and well written with straightforward scriptural answers. Readers appreciate the heartfelt examples that evoke empathy and how we can approach them. The book is described as helpful and a great tool for Christian friends. The author's language is described as clear and articulate, and providing crucial facts in a compassionate way. This is completely different than how he portrays the book itself using his cherry-picked reviews. This is so bad. And how has no one called him out for stuff like this before? Unless maybe someone has, and I've just been under a rock. But this is just such blatant and obvious misinformation that how did he just post this and think that he could just get away with it? I mean, he's got this video has almost 200K views now. How has no one called this out?
They meant abortions, but they're just kind of angry. So I want to try to quickly talk
about
let me go
back here.
Sure, they meant abortions, but they're just of Christianity to bully trans women, women who get abortion, and the gay community. I mean, I'm sure they meant abortions, but they're just kind of angry. So I want to try to quickly talk about why people like this are attacking empathy and how we can use the philosophy.
Jordan Peterson, the problem of too much empathy. My favorite videos from Jordan Peterson are him talking about how empathy is a good thing and it's something to cultivate within yourself. What?
Philosophy of someone like Aristotle to talk about why empathy is actually super useful and even politically important. Now, to put this really simply, the logic of contemporary American capitalism prioritizes
There it is, right? Capitalism is the boogeyman. Capitalism is the monster that is under your bed and inside of your closet.
Individualism and notions of individual freedom and liberty at all costs. Now, of course, this type of individual is antithetical to the practice of empathy. If we all have the freedom to do whatever we want and achieve wealth and success, well, why should I have empathy for a homeless person in my community? Empathy, on the other hand...
Huh? That literally does not track. And actually, the principle of freedom is like the only emotional appeal that the right has and uses on occasion. It's like, yeah, I think that person should be allowed to do whatever they want, right? And that person should be allowed to do whatever they want. Matter of fact, everyone should be allowed to do whatever they want, right? Like, that is an appeal to emotion, where it's like, oh, what's the harm in letting people do whatever they please? And that's how libertarians get people into their midst. And then I'm like, well, I think it's bad for a parent to feed LSD to their baby. I don't, right? Because they're all, so much against like the war on drugs and things. But the emotional appeal to freedom is so commonly used on the right. And like, freedom is an inherently emotional appeal. It's when you strip away emotions and you strip away empathy is when you can start calling for the removal of freedom, right? To take freedom away from someone is not nice. It's not empathetic. So you can't make an emotional appeal that is in support of that. And empathy is not even counter to capitalism necessarily. It's counter to some forms of capitalism, what I used to refer to as hyper-capitalism. I don't know what's referred to as now, but like when it comes to using capitalism in a profit over everything else type of method, then sure, yeah, I can lead to that. But that's like saying that like cars are killing machines. I mean, sure, they can kill some people if they're used a certain way, but that's not the primary way that they're used, and it's not usually how things turn out.
And challenges this type of individualism by asking us to relate to the experiences of those.
And hold on, there's just one more thing I want to point out, because this is also this is also something that the left likes to use. They will say, if you are empathetic, you'll support this particular policy. So I think that what he's probably referring to here is when it comes to the homeless, right? Have empathy for the homeless, right? What he's probably saying is, don't criminalize homelessness, or at least like don't kick homeless people off of like the sides of the street or the road or whatever. Allow the homeless to just build up as many encampments that they want at the very least. If not, forcibly take over hotels and put homeless people inside of them. This is something that has been done before. The left has done this. They've also done this with migrants that they've wanted to import and get the votes up. But it's true. But like, those are the types of things where if you listen to an appeal to emotion from the left, they will say, hey, if you have empathy, you'll support this policy. And if you don't support this policy, you don't have empathy, right? There's a lot of them, they will have this one-track mind where it's like they can't imagine why, if you have empathy for someone, you wouldn't support their political agenda, which is just not true. You can have empathy and support multiple courses of action. But that's not the framework that I think Michael Burns operates under.
This type of individualism by asking us to relate to the experiences of those who are suffering. And when Musk says that there is a civilizational suicidal empathy happening, the civilization he's talking about is, of course, white Western capitalism. The same civilization that a lot of
white Western capitalism. He says the West. The West isn't exclusively or necessarily white. The West typically refers to the United States, refers to Canada, and refers to Europe. It's generally what people think about when they say the West. I think there might be some overlap. Some people might consider Japan to be somewhat Western, but not really. It's mostly, when it comes to values, but still it's mostly Europe, United States, and Canada is what people think of when they think of Western values. And while, yes, America, I think, is mostly white, the white population in the United States, and I believe also Canada, is going down. Not to mention in places in Europe where, they're importing all of these migrants and refugees to the point where I don't even think the majority of people in England are white anymore. And, are you still going to say that England is white when it's so diverse at this point? No, because the same criticisms that he would have are that Elon Musk would have are affecting England, not just the United States of America.
Evangelical Christians love capitalism. It's weird because these people won't have sex until they're married, but they'll just 69 with capitalism all night with no regrets, thinking that Christ is up there being like, oh yes, good stuff, rub it till you bust. That was fucked. And empathy is a weakness for someone.
What a weird portion of the video. This guy is so weird. What in the world? I didn't even understand everything that he was trying to get out there. But I will say it's actually kind of funny because hold on. Oh, never mind. There's stuff I could go into in depth, but if I go into all of the problems with this video, I'm not gonna get through all of it before midnight. So let's just keep going.
Like Elon, because it stands in the way of pure market forces. For example, giving.
I don't think that's what he was going for. I very rarely heard Elon Musk talk about economic systems or like market forces and things like that. That's not his primary focus. He's actually mostly focused on making sure that you're not being wasteful when you're running your business or running the country, decreasing debt, and also a lot of social issues. He cares about a lot, not as much about market forces from what I can tell. And I don't think that that's the reason he's given for like opposing empathy to a ludicrous degree or being ruled exclusively by your emotions. I don't think he's ever said, I don't like appeals to emotion because they get in the way of market forces, which itself is extremely absurd. Right, bro, the tobacco industry made a fortune off of emotional appeals, okay? It's not true that appeals to emotion always get in the way of market forces.
Healthcare to migrant workers is economically inefficient, or building public housing is bad for real estate developers. I don't know why I'm using finger quotes. This is actually what it is. Bad healthcare to migrant workers is economically inefficient forces. For example, giving healthcare to migrant workers is economically inefficient.
I mean, it is true. I mean, it's something that's very expensive to produce that you're giving away for free. Now, of course, the government will often lie and say, oh, we don't have the money to fund that particular thing, but then they'll just write blank checks to Ukraine. So the argument that we can afford it doesn't really track when they're willing to just like get as much debt as they want. However, it is true that if you are going to exclusively fund healthcare with taxpayer funds rather than taxpayer funds as well as debt, then yes, what you're going to end up having is just continually raising taxes to meet to make sure that all of the workers in the healthcare industry are getting paid for not just taking care of the citizens who can afford healthcare or are paying for it through taxes, but also for the migrant workers who maybe they are getting underpaid, right? Because they're getting paid under the table, so they're not able to pay as much towards healthcare insurance, or B, they are not paying taxes, so in that way they're also not paying into the healthcare system. It is literally true that if you just keep on giving away free healthcare to people, that system will crumble. As much as that kind of runs counter to the left's appeal to emotion, that is how things work. If you've got $1,000 laptops that you just want to give away to free for everyone, guess what? That laptop factory is going to shut down and die. That's just the reality of things. Unless the government is willing to subsidize that industry and just like go into tons of debt, spending all of the money that's required to pay for each and every laptop, that industry is just going to die. That's how it works. You can't just poof create healthcare out of thin air.
Or building public housing is bad for real estate developers. I don't know why I'm using finger quotes. This is actually what these people think. Now, in the tradition of phenomenology, which is a type of philosophy, you can Google it. Empathy isn't just like a feeling or a vibe. It's a way that we have an experience of the other. For example, if you tell me that you're hungry because you forgot to eat lunch, I can empathize with that experience because I too have been hungry before. And in imagining what my own hunger felt like, I'm able to empathize with that experience that is not mine. And in this version of empathy, we get a sort of co-being with another that leads to a type of intersubjectivity. And this intersubjectivity conflicts with that spirit of radical individualism. And it can help create a common world that allows us to transcend individual perspectives. And I bring up this.
So that that is true. Now I will say that the way that I've seen the right use the argument that like, oh, everything in the pursuit of freedom is good, freedom is the ultimate good or virtue of a society, that when you use that in like the third person, that is the empathetic version of that, where it's like everyone should have freedom to do whatever they want. That's like third person freedom. First person freedom is I should be able to do what I want regardless of how that affects other people. Although I don't think you generally see that in right-wing political policies unless it sort of skews towards Christian nationalism, where it's like, okay, we should be putting like Bibles in churches instead of Qurans, for example. That is generally the only types of right-wing policies that you'll see that will run counter to the more empathetic version of the appeals for freedom, where it's like, let everyone do what they want. Generally speaking, right-wingers will be like, oh, those people, yeah, let them do whatever they want. I mean, maybe not around my kid, but yeah, let them do whatever they want.
Phenomenological understanding, because it reminds us that empathy is way more than just a feeling, which is how the toxic empathy crowd describes it. And I'm going to put a link to an essay on the phenomenology of empathy in the description if you guys want to check that out. This speaks to what
Wait, so he read an essay about phenomenology, but he didn't read the book about the sin of empathy? Now, I want to be the most charitable to Michael Burns here and assume that he's just, when he was talking about the book and like, the other things, that he just was misinformed, that he didn't read the book or read the material. He just went off of what some folks had told him, or basically just going off the title of the book, didn't even read the description. I don't want to say that he's willingly lying, because I do think that he's intelligent. I've watched this stuff before. And I don't think that he would have read the book and think it would be reasonable to say what he's saying here. But like, just reading an essay about phenomenology and then not even reading the description of a book called The Sin of Empathy is just like, okay, interesting priorities there.
Empathy is recognizing that the humanity of others is always already interlinked with my own humanity. And this fights against the tendency to make people that aren't like us wholly other, right? Like, I don't have to have empathy for a migrant because that's a totally different type of person than me, or for a trans person, or for a woman, or for someone suffering some type of oppression, right? Because they're not like me.
Now, the interesting thing about this, though, is that, like, who you won't hear in that list of people to have empathy for, right? It is, the families of people who got like shot in the head by random illegal immigrants who have been in jail multiple times, convicted for violent crimes, right? You're not going to hear him say, oh, let's have empathy for those people. Not going to hear him say, oh, let's have empathy for people who, died of, or the families of those who have died of drug overdoses from drugs that were run across the border by illegal immigrants. Not necessarily going to hear him say, oh, let's have empathy for the women and girls who have been insulted in their bathrooms by males who came in there because they felt like they belonged there. Oh, then empathy is returning an error 404 message. What happened there? Or maybe 403 perhaps. I don't know. But it's interesting how selective some folks on the left will be with the empathy that they're choosing to weaponize. Because the right can weaponize empathy too, and that's how the right is gaining ground on the LGBT issue, actually.
So I don't have to worry about it. And we can see a little bit more about the philosophical and political importance of this by checking out Aristotle. Now, he doesn't really talk about empathy as such, but his discussion of justice and friendship in his Nicomachean Ethics is pretty helpful here. Okay, so listen to how Aristotle describes justice. He says, for this same reason, justice alone of the virtues is thought to be another's good, because it is related to our neighbor, for it does what is advantageous to another, either a ruler or a co-partner. The gist here is that to be just is to be concerned with the good of another. Justice itself, definitionally, is about me caring about and seeking the good of people that aren't just like me. This is absolutely counter to contemporary Western individualism. Aristotle writes that the best man is not he who exercises his virtue towards himself, but he who exercises it towards another, for this is a difficult task. And this is why for Aristotle, justice isn't just a part of virtue, it basically is virtue. Aristotle also talks about friendship in this text. He says that perfect friendship is the friendship of men who are good and alike in virtue. Friendship, like justice for him, is perfected when we seek out the good of another, when our friendship is derived from the desire for the other to sort of have good stuff happen to them. And I think if we consider friendship and justice together in this way, it gives us a pretty good model of social empathy. So for example, if I can acknowledge the humanity of others, then I can desire their good or desire what's good for them, and think not just about what's best or most advantageous for me as an individual, but think about my neighbors and my community as a whole. And like Aristotle said,
Right. And so I think your community as a whole would be benefited by a bankrupt healthcare system and homeless tents everywhere, right? Like, yeah, the 10 cities, right? We're down with that. That's to the best of everyone, right? It's what we're going for here. I'm just checking. I'm just tracking, right? This is the empathy, right, that we're striving towards.
Says if this is how we think, well, we're basically covering the whole of virtue. So if we let this type of empathy shape how we think about politics, it's going to lead us to worry less about our individual interest, what's good for us, or I don't know, our bank account, our businesses, our electric car company, whatever it is. We're going to think about the community at large. We're going to think about the good of others. We're going to think about the good of humanity and not just me. So I don't know, for example, like if you make a ton of money, it's like lower taxes, good for me because maybe I'll pay less taxes, but if me paying my fair share, it means that other people get access to healthcare.
They have no idea what the fair share is, by the way. The fair share is more. That's what the left-wing fair share is. If you ask a leftist what the fair share is, they will never tell you. Okay, maybe some will, but most leftists will not be able to answer the question, what is your fair share? And here's the interesting thing is, I'm not upper class, but I would like to pay less taxes too. And also, there are taxes that reduce that cut taxes. There are tax cuts that affect the rich, but also affect the poor. Also affect the middle class. See, it's possible to cut taxes on more people who aren't just the rich. What about that? What a novel idea. Maybe tax cuts inherently are not a bad thing. Now, personally, if we're going for fairness, in all honesty, the only tax that I wholeheartedly support is a flat sales tax. I think I've talked about that before. I'm not going to go ad nauseum about that position, but I will say if you do a flat tax, then everyone is paying the same percentage. It's fair. It's equal. If you want to increase the tax rate or decrease the tax rate, it affects the rich and the poor the same. I think that's entirely reasonable. So, like, to say that it's unempathetic to cut taxes, like, for the rich is ridiculous, especially when the rich get more money. What do? Do they just sit on it? No. A lot of rich people, they will either reinvest it into their business. And by the way, everyone involved with those businesses are poorer than them. So it goes towards their salaries, right? Increases sales for those businesses. The people who work for those businesses, they get paid more money. Those people, they will go and buy things from stores, right? Increasing the revenue of those businesses, but also probably helping to maintain, if not boost, the careers and salaries of the people who work at those stores. Those people who are probably even poorer than them, they will go on and use that money to buy groceries or whatever, and then that boosts the grocery store industry. It's just, when you have more money in the economy, that allows and stimulates economic growth. So I think it's actually kind of interesting because for all the talk of empathy that Michael Burns is doing, it doesn't seem like he's having much empathy for the rich here. Because if you put yourself in the shoes of the rich, you know, if I have an extra few $100K lying around, maybe I will buy a Maserati, and maybe I will take that Maserati to the shop to get work done. And those people who are there who are maybe in the middle or lower classes will get paid more money by me. Maybe because I'm rich, I'll give them a big fat tip for working on my Maserati or whatever. Like, if you just put yourself in the shoes of people of others who are not necessarily in the specific classes that the left tells you to have empathy for, then it would be easier to understand why people on the other side of the aisle would have the positions that they have without just strawmanning them like Michael Burns is doing here.
I don't know, maybe that's good. When I do this, I'm basically being a just friend to my whole community. To paint in super broad brushstrokes to start to wrap this one up, this really shows us the difference between the ethics of an individualist, capitalist, market-driven logic and a logic driven by the spirit of empathy and egalitarianism. Okay, I'm trying to keep this quick, but I do need to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters, especially my biggest dogs. I see y'all and I appreciate you. There's a link in the description if you want to support what I'm doing and get some.
That's crazy. Such a misleading video, and everyone here is on board with this. Like, people need to stop associating accumulation of wealth with intelligence and common sense. Who does that? Oh, that person has more common sense because he's rich. Who does that? Where are the people on the right saying, oh, look at how much common sense George Soros has? No one's doing that. What in the world? Empathy is a bug which makes you weak, says someone using their child as a living shield in public to avoid getting shot. I will say, okay, and this is what I was going to talk about, because he didn't get into this. Maybe it's because he doesn't have enough empathy for the right. But I will say that the left views empathy as a society's greatest good, and the right views I don't know if, like, objectivity as the greatest thing to pursue. There's this guy who's like a therapist on Instagram who is like really good at at talking. I think like Joe Tucci therapy or whatever. He made a reel on Instagram about this a few months ago where he broke this down expertly, how the right prefers to be more objective and to throw all empathy out when it comes to ruling, because empathy is a bad thing to consider, because empathy makes things less objective and it could get in the way of justice, which is true. But at the same time, it's good to have empathy and use it to inform your policies. It's just that if you look at how the left uses empathy, usually that empathy is used towards minorities, where on the right, if you see empathy used, it's towards the majority, which isn't always the greatest thing in the world, but that can lead to prioritizing things like public safety over the feelings of a small minority group, such as what you see with how the left has been addressing transgenderism, for example, in the public eye. Now, I know this video is going to get long in the tooth. There are so many things I could go into about this whole thing. And if you guys want me to talk more about empathy in a specific realm of American politics or a specific sector of society, let me know in the comments below and I'll be happy to pursue that. I don't want this video to just go on forever, though. I don't want to be rambling for all of time. So I'm going to have to end it here. But I will say, man, like it's been a while since I watched like a full video by Michael Burns or Wisecrack, but like I didn't know that he was that bad. Like, this is actually legitimately sad. This dude has like 3 million subscribers on the main channel. This is crazy. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. We're running short on time, so I'm not going to be able to do the X-Defiant portion of the stream, unfortunately. I am going to do that in a future stream, though. But there's just other news stories I want to get to. But I will say, there's this one thing I've wanted to talk about for a long time, and I wanted to make a separate video about this, but I haven't had the chance to do it until now, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. It's not going to take too long, but it's going to be this. So we've heard a lot from the left they've been crying for a messiah ever since Donald Trump won, because they basically blamed Donald Trump's victory in 2024 on Joe Rogan's existence, because they saw Donald Trump, they saw other right-wing figures like Vivek Ramaswamy and JD Vance go on these podcasts with massive critical acclaim, massive viewership, and extremely positive reception, right? And, you know, Kamala Harris, she kind of sort of did a media tour on podcasts as well, but it wasn't that great. It was very limited. People didn't really respond to that all too well. And so a lot of people looked at that and they were like, oh, this is the podcast election. The winners all went on podcasts and the losers didn't do that well on the podcast if they didn't go on at all. What the left needs is thought leaders in the podcast space to sort of rival those of Joe Rogan, and in the way that Joe Rogan and Tim Pool and other podcasters are shaping the right-wing mind. We need left-wingers to have podcasts who similarly shape left-wingers' minds. Now, I will say that there have been left-wing podcasts for a long time. Also, cable news shows have been, many of them have been in podcast form for a long time. But generally speaking, outside of like New York Times podcasts and like Pod Save America in extremely urban areas that are densely populated with yuppies and college graduates, you don't really see left-wing podcasts sort of, get a lot of attention or get very popular among, young adults. Now, I will say, though, that, if the left is going to have a Joe Rogan, the interesting thing about Joe Rogan is, you might not know this. Many people might not acknowledge this, but Joe Rogan is not primarily political. Why he has been so effective in shaping public opinion is that he is just he's just a guy who finds certain things interesting. He likes cracking jokes. He loves the comedy scene, so he interviews a lot of comedians. He interviews famous people, right? Like Rob Lowe was on the Joe Rogan Experience. Is Rob Lowe necessarily political? No. He's not. That dude's an actor. He's had I think recently, he had like who's the guy who makes all those bloody gory films? Quentin Tarantino. He had Quentin Tarantino on the podcast. He's not political, and I don't think they talk about politics at all during that episode. If the left is going to look for someone who's going to replace Joe Rogan, they need to stop looking at these people who are so ideological. Looking at Pod Save America, look at Hassan Piker, looking at Dean Withers, looking at who was that guy who was paid by the DNC? Harry Sisson. Looking for all these people who are purely political to be their champions and push their ideas into the forefront of the American mind. They're not going to do it if someone is standing there with a vote blue no matter who sticker on their chest, right? Extremely ideological, leading with the politics. They need someone who is fun. They need someone who is jovial. They need someone who is easy to get along with and doesn't take things super seriously all the time. Someone who's willing to speak to people from all different walks of life, and is just not as negative or not as puritanical as a lot of left-wing political commentators tend to be. And so if there's ever going to be a left-wing Joe Rogan, I think he's actually rising to prominence right now. We see his growth happening right now. He is sparking political conversations right now. And his name is Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith. This is a guy who has been a hallmark of the sports world for decades, right? I want to say decades. He has his own podcast now called the Stephen A. Smith Show. That show has taken many iterations over the past several years. It's been an ESPN radio show that was canceled and then brought back and then canceled again. Now he has his own podcast called the Stephen A. Smith Show. And in that podcast, he mostly talks about sports because he is a sports guy. And sports is a very, very major pillar of American culture and American society. Kind of similar to how Joe Rogan, he mostly was like in like the sports world of the UFC as well as comedy. Stephen A. Smith has penetrated American culture and society by being a big figure in the sports world. But Stephen A. Smith talks about politics here and there. And as political things heat up, just like Joe Rogan, he talks about politics more. And then when things simmer down, just like Joe Rogan, he sticks to the sports. He sticks to the things that got him the most popular. So that's the blueprint that you would need to follow if you're going to replace Joe Rogan. Generally, the Joe Rogan replacement is probably not going to be done on purpose. Stephen A. Smith is not trying to be the next Joe Rogan. That's not what he's trying to do. And he's not around trying to push left-wing talking points. Similar to how like Joe Rogan doesn't necessarily try to push any political talking points to the left or the right. So watch out for Stephen A. Smith, especially if you're on the right, because that guy is going to end up being the left-wing equivalent to Joe Rogan if his trajectory remains the same and if no one else comes up doing something similar. I find this very interesting. I also find it interesting that not many people are pointing out, hey, maybe Stephen A. Smith is going to be the next Joe Rogan, but for the left. So that's my thought. If you guys have any thoughts on who else might be the left-wing's answer to Joe Rogan, who's not Stephen A. Smith, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are. I could be a little bit, oblivious. That might be a blind spot to me because I am on the right wing, despite being an aspiring enlightened centrist. I am still a right winger. So, maybe there's some people I'm just not aware of, but it seems to me that Stephen A. Smith is the only hope that the left wing has of having a replacement for Joe Rogan. Brayleno in the chat says, "Hola, I'm not Spanish." Cool, I guess. Congrats on not being Spanish. Keep doing that, I suppose. I don't know how to respond to that. If you're Spanish, you're Spanish. If you're not, you're not. Either way, it's cool. I don't know why you felt the need to point that out, but okay. Okay. There's some interesting things going on in the Discord. Unfortunately, I only have 15 minutes before my next segment, so I'm not going to have the time to get into all of this. But interesting. It looks like there's some interesting things going on in Canadian politics. I'll have to table that for a future stream this week. But we've also got this clip here. This is from Timcast Clips. This is called AOC emerging as leader of the Democratic Party, but only gets 10% approval. This makes me sad as someone who is on the right and desperately wishing that the left would push Jasmine Crockett as the future of their party.
They ask, which Democrat represents the party's values? The best, the highest anyone achieved was 10%. That's it. And it was AOC. Kamala Harris came in second with 9%.
That's crazy.
And I think then Bernie Sanders, and then everyone else, and Barack Obama. I think it was Obama. I don't know. And then everybody got.
So how many people must they have voted for if the person who got the most votes was he only got 10%? That may actually prove that the left has a deep bench. I think the right, and I actually committed to this mistake last year in my political coverage. I think I made a video called "The Democratic Party is Dead." I was wrong. I walked back many of the things I say in that video because the Democratic Party is not dead. They have some sleeper agents. They got some sleeper cells. There are people that you, on the face of it, especially folks on the right, would never dream to say, oh, this person could be successful in American politics. This person could be the next president of the United States. But you know what? Gavin Newsom, he's got a winsome personality. He's got a beautiful smile, and he speaks very confidently. He says all of the right things. Someone like him, hey, I watched Red versus Blue debate. If you want to watch the Red versus Blue debate, go check that out on my Non-Newbie Highlights channel where I reacted to the whole thing. The way that he spoke in that debate, he could win elections if he just speaks like that. And he knows it. He knows that he has like a sizable portion of the American population in the palm of his hand. That's why he started the podcast. He knows what he's doing. I think there are going to be people following him. Maybe Ro Khanna, maybe some other folks as well. I think the Republicans shouldn't be sleeping on what the left could bring to the table, especially when the right wing is becoming less and less ideological and more cult-like in its following of Donald Trump when it comes to especially the MAGA crowd, who are forsaking principles just to do whatever Donald Trump says to do. When you have the left starting to come up with ideas like Gavin Newsom walking back some of his positions on the LGBT agenda of the Democratic Party. Okay, being like, okay, I've got this idea of how to move forward, rather than saying everyone get in line and get on board with this progressive agenda. That is, when you have a vision for what the country needs to look like in the future, then that is more appealing than, Republicans who are basically going to go out in the future and say, hey, let's just do whatever Donald Trump would want us to do, which I think is what half of the Republicans are going to do in the 2028 presidential election, unfortunately.
4% or less, down to 1%, meaning there's no party leadership, and the best they can muster up is AOC.
Yep.
10%, that's it. Republican Party, Donald Trump. The Republican Party supports Trump like 100%. It's like, if you go to any Republican and say, who's the leader of the Republican Party? Trump. You go to any Democrat, who's the leader of the Republican Party? They might say Elon Musk to be cheeky, but it's Donald Trump. You go to Democrats, say, who's in charge of the Democratic Party? And they go,
do you know why that is, though?
What?
I will say this. It's not bad that they don't have a leader. You don't need a leader necessarily. What you just need is an agenda that you agree on to move forward. The things the Democratic Party has been pushing is extremely unpopular. Like, the things they've been pushing the most are extremely unpopular, even to the point where a lot of Democrats even don't agree with it. Like, the Democrats just stopped talking about the whole gender thing altogether, because the majority of people are not on board with that. There are other issues too, like, supporting Palestine over Israel. The majority of Americans don't support Hamas, so they should cut down on that rhetoric as well, because it's divisive and people just aren't on board with it. They don't support it. And if they forsook some of those things, it doesn't matter if they have a leader, because then they have an agenda that people would be on board with. So, for example, I think one of the missed opportunities, I don't understand this, when Kamala Harris picked Tim Walz, I think the Democratic Party did the best thing that they have done in the past 4 years politically, where they looked at Tim Walz and they said, oh, this guy's great. He supported school lunches in schools in the state of Minnesota. That's the type of thing that everyone can get on board with, because Republicans were hating on Tim Walz, and then the Democrats were having a very good response to that. Actually, they were like, oh, you're hating on Tim Walz, the guy who wants kids to be able to eat in public schools? What's wrong with eating in public schools? You want kids to starve? Like, that was a very, very winning line of argumentation. Unfortunately, they sort of like discarded that, and they're not having a nationwide push to fund school lunches for some reason. I don't know why they're not saying, oh, let's codify this policy and make sure that no kid is hungry. Maybe in part it's because they know that that's not really happening, that there's no school saying no lunches for you. But still, it's the type of thing where it's like, it's a policy that most people agree with. It's a policy that most people support. You could get people on board with it, right? And then the left is like, and then the right is sort of like, I mean, but taxes though, right? Meanwhile, these parents are like, I want Johnny to be able to have some lunch to eat. You know what I mean?
Why they have no leader?
Yeah. No. Why? Well, yeah. Why they're nothing? Why
well, I think when you represent nothing,
right,
there is no one who can represent you. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the 2020 election cycle,
the Democratic Party does not represent nothing. They just represent policies that are extremely unpopular at the moment. Predominantly, there are things that the Democratic Party supports that they just aren't, that the majority of people support, but the Democratic Party just doesn't focus on them for some reason. I don't know why, but this is not where they're trying to go.
Joe Biden said, I hate Trump. And you vote for hating Trump. And right, people voted for hating Trump. Well, I'll tell you what. The way I described it this morning, if you got two guys in your kitchen, one guy says, I'm going to cook you dinner and I'm going to make beef bourguignon. And it's going to be the best you've ever had. And I'm going to insult you and cuss and swear and make a big mess. It's like, okay, that doesn't sound too good, but he's going to make the best meal ever. The other guy goes, I won't do any of that. Okay, guess what happens when you vote for the guy who promises not to do anything for you? Come dinner time, there's no dinner.
Empty plate.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can have the crazy guy who you think is messy.
But that's not what's going on, right? Kamala Harris was a progressive who supported all sorts of far left things during her run as a when she was trying to get the Democratic Party nomination. She tried to move back to the center, but she supported still a lot of things that majority of Americans are at best uneasy about. So it's not that the Democratic Party is the guy doing nothing. The Democratic Party is the guy who's like, okay, if you vote for me, you have to go to bed at 7 p.m. You have to give your sister half of your toys to use for half of the day. You can only have 2 pieces of candy each week, like going down a list of all of these things. And then you've got the other person who's this other babysitter who's like, you know what? I am going to let you eat as much candy as you want, have as much sugar as you want. You can even draw on the walls. And even if like the results of some of those things are going to be bad, the things that you're appealing, the things that you're saying and supporting are the things that the populace are going to support wholesale. And so, of course, you're going to win the elections when you've got an appeal like that.
See, and talks weird, but he makes you a brief bourguignon. Which I don't even know what that is. What is that? Is it like beef and like a white wine sauce?
I don't know.
I think with noodles.
Sounds delicious.
Well,
Noodles?
Yeah.
I don't think he's saying it right either.
Why the Democrats are super unpopular right now is because of Trump. But why in particular because of Trump? Trump is so effective at baiting the far left Democrats, the far lefts in the Democrat Party, to rally around the most unpopular things that make the rest of the party look really stupid and drag the rest of them down. So, for example, with this most recent trade Nicaragua stuff, this is literally a terrorist organization. Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt said these are monsters who tortured, raped, and murdered a 12-year-old. They said they were responsible for killing 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley. So he's forcing the Democrats to defend literal rapists and murderers.
True.
And the Democrats are asking themselves, why are we so unpopular?
Oh yeah, and that's another problem that the left has too, where many of the left-wing positions are literally just contrarian. They are opposing Donald Trump because anything Donald Trump does must be bad. But what happens when the things that Donald Trump is supporting are extremely popular? Then what you basically are doing is you're literally boxing yourself up into the most unpopular position possible because you are choosing to oppose the one person who is representing the most positions that are appealing to the most amount of Americans at that particular time.
He's deporting Mahmoud Khalil, right? Supports literal terrorists. He's not just anti-Israel. Somebody who supports Hamas, who is anti-Israel, and now he baited the.
I actually looked this up, and I plan on doing a video about this in the future. I don't know that he supports Hamas. The thing that they used to tie him to Hamas, actually, I'll play this. I'll show you guys this. They said through June. From June through November of 2023, he was a political affairs officer with the UNRWA, which has extensive ties to Hamas. A damning Israel dossier compiled through interrogations of Hamas terrorists and documents found in Gaza estimated roughly 1,200 of UNRWA's staffers were linked to Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The group last year fired 10 staffers involved in the October 7, 2023 terror attack in the UNRWA, which gets millions in U.S. aid, previously came under fire from U.S. House Representatives from aiding Hamas with food, fuel, and supplies. So it's not just him being a supporter of Hamas verbally. This is him working for the UNRWA during a time in which they were allegedly helping Hamas and giving them material support. So it's even worse than what Elad is saying here.
Far left to literally go protest in the street and make him the face of their movement. So he's so effective at baiting the far left, and the centrist Democrats just have to get dragged to their grave by the far left.
I just have a quick correction. It's a red wine sauce. I can't believe I said with a white wine sauce. I'm silly.
But also, they have nothing to offer, right? They have no good news to bring to anyone. So even American values were based off hope, giving you freedom, giving you liberty, giving you confidence that this is the land of the free. But Democrats do the exact opposite. Racism exists, therefore, if you're Mexican, if you're a minority, you're not going to get the same opportunities as the next guy. So they have no hope. They have nothing to offer. Once again, it's only the.
I think they're failing to coalesce around the most popular issues within their party because of the centrist and the far left. And Trump, I think, neutralized some of their issues because I think the Democrats, they've won elections in the past, and mean, I foresee that I'm winning elections in the future once they find their footing in leadership here. But I mean, on some positions, many people in the country, do prefer the Democrats, but Trump managed to dispel them and focus on issues that are so just unpopular for Democrats. So, for example, we haven't heard a word about abortion. That is the most popular issue Democrats can ever talk about.
That's what I
and
was
Trump has managed to completely dispel that by saying he wouldn't move forward with the national abortion ban. So the most important issues he is dispelling, and then he's pressing his thumb down on the most unpopular issues that the Democrats have to deal with. Like, again, deporting literal rapists and murderers. And
Right,
this
it's
is who the
extremely popular.
ACLU decides to focus their defense on. Like, you could have legalese to challenge any case. And
We also
Donald Trump needs to be more selective on this one. Donald Trump should do things that he, like the meme 7 years ago? I can't believe it's been that long. Wow. The meme was, ingenious move, Trump supports impeachment, forcing Democrats to oppose. The fact that Democrats are actually defending Tren de Arago right now because Trump is deporting them.
Yeah.
We should just someone's going to go to the president and say, Mr. President,
Right.
anything you do, they'll do the opposite.
Right. Now the Democratic Party is like, oh, we should be nice to the terrorists because Donald Trump doesn't like them. Like, what?
Sit up.
right.
So, first of all, you should start praising McDonald's, Starbucks, Chuck E. Cheese's, then get them to come out against all of it. Then force those businesses to side with you because Democrats are opposing them. So when Trump brought McDonald's, this happened. People like McDonald's, okay?
Wait, this
It
happened?
may not be as big as it once was, but people love their cheeseburgers and their French fries. That's why McDonald's is everywhere. Donald Trump ordered McDonald's to the White House, and the Democrats started attacking McDonald's, saying it was disgusting, and I'm like,
Hilarious.
But
you're
McDonald's
gonna
didn't even
force
have anything to do
McDonald's
with
to come
that.
out in support of Donald Trump because they have no choice.
That's crazy,
Because
dude.
it's like, okay, McDonald's, side with the liberals and agree that your food is garbage, or side with Donald Trump, a guy who is on Air Force One with a Big Mac right now in RFK Jr. And he's Trump should play up these very popular issues. People love Taco Bell. Trump should go to Taco Bell. Then they're going to start making fun of Taco Bell. They're going to say it gives you the runs and all this other stuff. And then Taco Bell's going to be like,
Wait, so are you saying Trump should be pro-choice?
Which it doesn't, by the way. It doesn't do that anymore. It used to, but it doesn't.
Well,
just debate the Democrats.
I mean,
because they would probably change their position. That would probably,
Well, I mean,
probably be the one thing.
he's not for a nationwide ban.
Right.
I do think
Which is inconsistent.
there's
on its
some
face.
things they can't fall into.
Yeah.
Issues like bringing McDonald's to the White House means nothing to them, so they will take the inverse position. The abortion thing would result in them saying Trump's a liar, don't trust him, because it's too egregious, right? You can't go that far. But Trump can literally do anything popular that's like mainstream. Like Trump should go to Target and invite the CEO of Target, and he should say, show me around your beautiful store. Democrats will come out saying Target is awful.
Wait. You know what's funny is I would actually love to see this, right? So we've got the whole Tesla thing right now, right? With the Tesla terrorists going around, destroying property in hopes of terrorizing Tesla customers, right? It would be hilarious to see Donald Trump go out in public and say, and we actually went in public and said go buy Teslas, but it'd be funny if we went out in public and said, don't buy Fords. I don't like their trucks. I don't like their cars. Get a Tesla instead. Leftists go out, trade their Teslas for Fords. And then Donald Trump comes out, does a some sort of public event where he shows off like a new Ford EV truck, and he says, I love Ford so much. Ford is awesome, and look, you've got a surge in sales. I want to congratulate you. You're a great business people. You make great cars. Like, it would make leftists so mad if Donald Trump did that. And I genuinely think that that's something he could do. I think you could be a little too extreme. I don't think that literally every single thing that Donald Trump would support, a Democrat would oppose. But there are many things that they would. And I think that buying a Ford vehicle is one of those types of things. They would be so mad. Bro, they got the car payments and everything. And they're going to end up being on board with Donald Trump just because he decided to yank their chain. That would be hilarious.
I'll awful. How could you? You're evil. Don't shop there. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast
Oh, that's the end of the clip.
IRL.
Okay. He has a good point, and I think it sort of is understated because I think people underestimate how much of the mainstream left-wing ideology is just opposing Donald Trump at this point. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and hop onto the Discord server. We're gonna be playing Halo here in a second. Hold on, let me see. Halo voice. Let me see. Okay, there we go. I'm in the VC now, so I'm gonna be diving into some Halo. Now, until the guys hop in to the game, I'm gonna be turning on TTS. Now, we all know that Halo takes a while to load, and so if they're not on in like the hey, what's up? I was literally saying I wasn't sure how long it'd be until you hopped on to the server. Wait, can you hear me? I knew you were having mic troubles earlier. Oh, hold on, wait. Oh, hey, I can hear you now. I was wondering if it was me for a second there.
Hey, you're good. We're here.
Hey, what's happening?
We were watching a movie. We were waiting until 9 until it was time for you to hop on, and then it was like, oh hey,
Nice.
it's 9:03. It's like,